Testosterone builds your muscle. It drives your libido. It regulates your mood, your energy, your ability to focus. It even affects how you process risk, how competitive you feel, how present you are in your own body. It is, in many ways, the hormone that determines what kind of man you get to be on any given day. Most men think of their masculinity as something they were born with. But testosterone tells a different story, because the very hormone at the core of masculine power is being shaped, meal by what lands on their plate. Your testosterone levels are built, over years, largely by what you eat, which means they can also be dismantled by what you eat. And the modern diet is dismantling it at a scale we've never seen before. A 2021 study tracked over 4,000 men and found that testosterone levels in men under 40 have dropped nearly 25% over the last 2 decades. A man in his 40s today has measurably lower testosterone than a man of the same age had in the 1980s. Same age, different era, different hormone profile.
I want to get into this dramatic decline of testosterone that's been happening since the 1960s. Now, this is a major problem because low testosterone decreases lifespan in men. And so it literally shortens your life. Low testosterone has also been linked to heart disease, cancer, diabetes. It's also been linked to weaker bones and smaller muscles, which causes you to age more quickly. So having low testosterone is incredibly harmful to men.
25%. That's the difference between wanting your life and just moving through it, between feeling like yourself and feeling like a dimmer version of who you used to be. The drive that used to come naturally, to compete, to build, to want things, quietly flattens. The muscle gets harder to build and easier to lose. The libido fades. The mood drops in ways that don't quite feel like sadness, just absence.
Reduced testosterone levels can impair the efficient production of signaling of neurotransmitters like serotonin and norepinephrine, both critical for mood regulation. Furthermore, testosterone influences the activity of enzymes involved in neurotransmitter metabolism, and its decline can lead to an imbalance. This can manifest as persistent sadness, anhedonia or loss of pleasure, chronic fatigue, cognitive impairment, and changes in sleep patterns. These are all hallmark symptoms of depressive disorders. It's not merely a symptom of aging, it's a hormonal state that can directly contribute to neuropsychiatric changes.
Most men never connect any of this to their testosterone. They call it stress. They call it getting older. They learn to live with it. But the question worth asking is what's actually causing it? And the answer is probably sitting in your kitchen. What changed? What did our ancestors eat that we've abandoned? And what have we brought into our diets that they never encountered? For most of human history, men didn't think about testosterone. They didn't need to. They ate food that came from the ground, from trees, from animals they hunted or raised. It was varied, it was whole, and it was doing something for their hormonal health that we're only now beginning to fully understand. Then, in the span of roughly 100 years, the human diet changed more dramatically than it had in the previous 100,000. It started with industrialization. Food became a product. Ingredients became formulas. The goal shifted from nourishment to shelf life, from nutrition to cost. And in that shift, 2 things happened simultaneously. Things that had sustained human hormonal health for millennia quietly disappeared from the plate, and things the human body had never encountered before took their place.
There are only 2 ways to make money as a food company, really at bottom. You have to use the cheapest possible ingredients, and you have to sell a lot of food. So cheap ingredients, ultra-processed food, enters the diet in the 1970s at that inflection point in the United States. And it happened at a time of following mass industrialization. So farming had become industrialized. And we were growing fewer crops with incredible efficiency. You take commodity crops, you take rice, wheat, corn, soy, and you turn them into their fats, starches, and proteins.
What disappeared first was fiber, not as a nutrient, but as the basic texture of eating. For most of human history, every meal came wrapped in it. Vegetables, legumes, whole grains, roots. The gut bacteria that thrive on fiber are the same bacteria that regulate estrogen clearance from the body. When estrogen isn't cleared efficiently, it accumulates, and elevated estrogen suppresses testosterone. Processing food meant stripping fiber out of it, and we stripped it out of almost everything. What disappeared alongside it were zinc and magnesium, two minerals that play a direct role in testosterone synthesis. They came from pumpkin seeds, beans, dark leafy greens, whole grains. They didn't vanish overnight. They eroded slowly as those foods were replaced by processed equivalents stripped of everything that made them worth eating. And healthy fat, the kind found in nuts, seeds, olives, avocados, became something to fear rather than something to eat. In the second half of the 20th century, dietary fat was identified as the enemy. Governments issued guidelines. Food companies reformulated their products. Low fat became synonymous with healthy. What filled the space that fat left behind was refined carbohydrates and sugar, the very things that, as we now know, do the most damage to testosterone. Meanwhile, the hormone itself was quietly starving. Testosterone is built from cholesterol. The raw material for the hormone at the core of masculine identity requires fat to exist. We spent decades removing it from the diet and wondering why everything else was going wrong. Into that space came three things the human body had never been asked to handle at this scale. Trans fats, invented in a laboratory in the early 20th century to make food cheaper and extend its shelf life. They don't exist in nature. Evolution never prepared the body for them. A study of 209 men found that those who consumed the most trans fats had 15% lower testosterone than those who consumed the least, and 37% lower sperm counts. Your great-grandmother never ate them. They are now in thousands of everyday foods. And if trans fats were the first invasion, refined sugar was the occupation. Refined sugar is a more recent invention than most people realize. For most of human history, sweetness was rare. Fruit, honey, the occasional root. The body learned to treat it as a signal of abundance, releasing insulin to capture every calorie it could. That system worked perfectly for a world where sugar was scarce. It was never designed for a world where sugar is in everything. Men who consume large amounts of sugary beverages are significantly more likely to have low testosterone. The mechanism runs deep. Refined sugar spikes insulin. Chronically high insulin makes the body resistant to it, and insulin resistance drives fat accumulation, particularly around the abdomen. That fat contains an enzyme called aromatase that actively converts testosterone into estrogen. The more fat, the more conversion. The more conversion, the lower the testosterone. And the lower the testosterone, the harder it becomes to lose the fat. The cycle compounds itself, meal after meal, year after year. The third thing is older than the other two, and in some ways, more complicated. Humans have fermented grain and fruit for thousands of years. Alcohol was never absent from the human diet entirely. But what our ancestors drank, and how often, looks almost nothing like what the modern world calls a normal relationship with alcohol. The body can metabolize a drink. It was never designed to metabolize a habit. Chronic or excessive drinking directly suppresses testosterone, partly because beer and wine carry estrogen-like compounds that interfere directly with hormonal production, and partly because alcohol taxes the liver, the same organ responsible for clearing excess estrogen from the bloodstream. When the liver is busy processing alcohol, estrogen accumulates, and accumulated estrogen suppresses testosterone. The damage is quiet, cumulative, and almost entirely invisible until it isn't. This is the story of the last 100 years of eating. A story about what happens when you remove the foods a species evolved to eat and replace them with products it was never built to handle. This didn't happen all at once. It happened across generations, each one eating a little more processed food than the last, each one normalizing what the previous generation would have recognized as strange. By the time you were born, the transition was complete. The food that was always supposed to be there wasn't, and what replaced it was already everywhere, in school cafeterias, in supermarket aisles, in everything that passed for a normal meal before you were old enough to question it. The testosterone crisis isn't a personal failure. It's the biological endpoint of 100 years of industrial food, arriving right on schedule in the bodies of men who never saw it coming. Men who were doing everything they were told was normal, eating what was available, living the way the modern world was designed for them to live. Your testosterone isn't falling because of who you are. It's falling because of what happened to the food supply in the century before you were born, and because that food supply is still what most men eat every day without thinking about it. Swap the packaged snack for a handful of seeds, the sugary drink for water, the processed oil for olive oil, A calm return to a way of eating that kept male hormonal health intact for 100,000 years before anyone thought to put it in a package. The body that's producing your testosterone is the same body that was producing it 100,000 years ago. It hasn't changed. What's changed is what you're giving it to work with. Feed it what it was built to run on. The rest follows.